Nasim Pedrad is the star, creator, executive producer, and head writer of Chad, and I'm Riley Chow. Now, why name the character Chad?
Just felt like the name that a little boy who was born Fairy Dune would associate as the most American sounding young boy's name, perhaps. Just felt simple, one syllable, easy to pronounce, and all he wants is to seem like a normal ass American boy. So it felt like the name he might pick for himself, which you discover he does.
So you're undoubtedly working in some of your own high school experiences. So why set the show in present day?
It's a great question. The show is very personal to me in a lot of ways, and I explore the awkwardness of adolescence in a way that was very authentic to my experience. But I also thought it would be cool to just set it today where kids deal with a lot of things that I didn't even have to deal with that kind of add to the stakes of um, what Chad is afraid of ultimately, which is not fitting in and feeling like he doesn't belong. Social media is something I didn't have to deal with, but kids today do. It's a very unique sort of hell to navigate. And it felt like, whether it's that or the overexposure to just information you get from the internet, like all the things that kids today have to deal with that maybe I didn't have to, it felt useful to do within the context of a character who is already just trying to keep his head above water and, just presented some extra challenges in his effort to fit in.
Who do you think the intended audience for the show is? Like, it is about kids. Do you think that kids should be watching it with their parents, or is it kind of just for adults?
I guess it depends on, the age. I've had friends that are watching it with their children. I'm assuming they feel they're mature enough to handle some of the content. But one of the things I was really excited about with this show is that, comedically, I do feel like it's a pretty accessible show in the sense that you don't have to be, an immigrant kid to relate to him. Everyone can relate to the notion of just wanting to belong and wanting to fit in. Certainly anyone that went to high school. And so, while his cultural identity is sort of this extra obstacle for him to get through in his quest to feel accepted by his peers, I think most people can relate to being that age and just wanting to not feel like an outsider. So hopefully the show is for everyone, and it has a very specific comedic sensibility to it. And obviously comedy is about taste, but I don't think we're really targeting any sort of specific demographic with the show.
How much does the pilot that we saw resemble the one that you did with Jason Weiner for Fox 5 years ago?
I would say the core of the character is really similar, but the cast is pretty different. That was, shot years ago, and so I had to recast all the kids. And aside from the cast, I think now that it lives in a more cable space, I can creatively get away with a lot more. And TBS has felt like a great home for it in the sense that episodes don't have to like end with a tidy little bow at the end of them. You can be a little messier. You can explore themes, whether it's sexuality or really like a lot of the themes of adolescence that we touch on. I can just get away with, I think, a little more. Like for example, the pilot episode of this iteration, the storyline between him and Marjorie, and some of what we show, and some of those awkward moments you live in, I'm not sure that we could have necessarily gotten away with on network television. And so in that respect, I feel like it's a great fit where it is now.
I guess I would note like how the season kind of ends on more of a cliffhanger than I was expecting. And then also within the episodes, it seems like sometimes he's going to be learning a lesson and then he doesn't really.
Yeah. Chad gets in his own way more than anyone. This isn't a show about a kid who's bullied by people. The student body is pretty tolerant and accepting of him. They just sort of find him somewhat unremarkable, which somehow to him is even worse. But he's sort of his own worst enemy, and he's so desperate to, you know, to be cool. That's what makes him not cool. And it's sort of the self-fulfilling prophecy. But um, you know, he sort of gets his ass handed to him in every episode. And a lot of, I think, where the comedy comes from is that he doesn't lose hope that tomorrow could be different. And so he gets right back up and goes for it again and messes up again. And sometimes he is called out for it, like in the Ikrima breakup episode when he's fetishizing Black culture. He gets absolutely reamed in that episode, and he doesn't totally understand why, but from his perspective, he just wants people to accept him, and he just wants people to like him. So it is coming from a rather desperate place. By the time we get to the finale, it's sort of be careful what you wish for, because he does experience popularity, but not for the right reasons. And, the cliffhanger has to do with like the audience knowing that and wondering, when will the other shoe drop? When will this eventually come crumbling down?
You mentioned Ikrima. I think in the first half of the season, I'm not sure there's a scene with Black people in it where it's not remarked like upon that they are Black. What are the challenges in writing that?
You know, this is a character study. This show is very character driven, and for Chad as our central character, um, it starts with the pilot where he finds out his mother's boyfriend is Muslim, and it doesn't even dawn on him that he might be a Black Muslim. He's just so embarrassed of his own heritage and doesn't want to stand out or be different that he assumes that her boyfriend's Middle Eastern and immediately wants to downplay that. And then when he discovers that Ikrima's Black, he loves that, because Chad's association with Black culture is what he's consuming in media and pop culture, and he only has positive connotations there. He doesn't know what the Black experience is in America in its entirety, and so while he's not meaning to be offensive by pointing out how awesome he thinks Black culture is, he is, like I mentioned, fetishizing it and deserves to be called out, which he is. And, it is a very nuanced thing. We wrote those episodes, but then we're lucky enough to shoot them with obviously very talented actual Black actors. And we had lots of conversations about that. And they were just so amazing. And the episode in particular that I'm thinking of where Chad meets Ikrima's friends. And we were, obviously wanted to make sure that we're not just showing Chad be ridiculous, but that he is reprimanded for it, even though he doesn't totally understand what he did wrong. And luckily, because I had those actors, it was not only an important conversation to have leading into filming, but we had a lot of fun shooting that episode.
Now, when you're developing a show for so many years, I'm wondering if that's overall a positive experience where you can kind of refine it and put out ultimately exactly what you want, or maybe for your next show, it'd be nice if you could just maybe get picked up and air in the same year.
I would say it would maybe be nice to just get picked up. Sure, why not? Rather than, half a decade. But of course, with this show in particular, I think what took so long, I wasn't like in development hell. It wasn't like I was writing all these different versions of the show at one place. It just took that long to go from one network to another. But because I think we found a home that's really the ideal fit for the show and the tone of the show and the sensibility of the show, I feel like it was worth the wait. Um, but yeah, it would be awesome to write something and see it up on its feet a year later. Why not?
And then in the meantime, we had this other show come out called Pen 15, where we have a couple of actresses in their 30s playing 13-year-olds. How did you feel about that?
Well, it's funny. My friend Yorma, who I worked with at SNL, was involved in that, and we talked about it because I think before they even premiered, we were like, "Oh, that's so funny." There are similarities in the conceit at the center of the show, but I think it's so awesome that both shows can exist at the same time and that they're different enough. There's obviously, in addition to being so funny and awesome, is nostalgic in that it's not set in present day, and um, they're playing two young girls, and so I just think it's really cool that what started with a firm no when I began this process. Now there are two shows that are finding audiences and, for lack of a better term, working and being able to exist, even though the idea might have felt a little weird or scary a few years back.
For this interview, I'm putting on a shirt that I got when I was 14 to kind of get into character. You said that the eyebrows are key for you. Can you articulate like how it is that you carry yourself differently when you're playing a 14-year-old?
Chad's, I would say, outer shell with the wig, the eyebrows, the clothes, the posture, all of that really kind of fueled the performance. Certainly early on when I was like discovering who he is and how he sounds. And it came from just playing with it and sitting, kind of slouched over and finding out where his vocal register was and improvising until I felt like I understood who he was. And then once I felt like I had a good handle on him, it it was just fun to find the comedy and the tone and sensibility of him, his point of view, his comedic dynamic with Peter, his comedic dynamic with people at school. And because I'm playing a boy, I felt like I could really disappear into the character and feel as far away from myself, the actor. Um, so all of that really helped me feel far away from, an adult woman.
Now, this seems to be your first show writing, show running. I believe you started the season with a co-showrunner, Hayes Davenport. What did you learn about, you know, those different roles?
Oh, yeah, Hayes was amazing. And then went on to run an LA City Council campaign, which he won. And I'm so happy for him. It's a lot to take on creating a show when you're the star, executive producer, co-showrunner. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned is to surround myself with really talented people that could just help bring that vision to life. You really can't do it alone. And um, I have an awesome writer by the name of Max Searle who will be helping run the room for season 2 with me. And I just think to be able to pull everything off, you need to be able to surround yourself with a great team, and so that you can delegate. If I'm shooting, I can't necessarily be, I can certainly try to rewrite things in between takes and, you know, um, get things done when I'm not shooting, but I I definitely do need to rely on the support of other producers and writers and showrunners to pull it all off. I also had an incredible crew. My department heads were all such pros, and um, when you're lucky enough to work with really talented people, you don't need to do much babysitting or micromanaging. Everyone's just killing it, doing what they're really good at, and it just makes my job so much easier. So I feel like I really lucked out in that regard.
Okay, Nasim, well, thanks very much for chatting with Gold Derby.
Thank you for having me. Thanks a lot.